The transport ship pulled away from station and Daniel Pierce watched it go. He stood alone in the maintenance bay, looking through the window at the stars. The ship's engines glowed bright as it moved faster and faster, carrying away the last people who had worked on the station. Daniel was supposed to be on that ship. His name was on the list, but he was still here. Chief Operations Manager had changed the plan 3 hours ago. The alien had looked at Daniel with his strange eyes and said through his translator, "Human workers are expendable. This one stays to finish repairs. We will get him later." Later never came. Daniel knew that now. The company did not care about human workers. They especially did not care about one human engineer left behind on a dying station. To them, he was just another cost they could cut, another problem they could ignore. Daniel was 28 years old. He had come from Earth 3 years ago, thinking he would find good work and adventure in space. The company had promised fair pay and safe conditions. They had lied. For 3 years, Daniel had fixed their broken equipment while they treated him like he was worth nothing. Now they had left him here to die. The station was huge, built for 5,000 people. Now it was empty except for Daniel. The air was already getting colder as the power systems shut down. The computer said life support would last 6 days, maybe 7 if he was lucky. After that, the air would run out and he would suffocate. Daniel walked to the main computer and checked the station's condition. Everything looked bad. The fusion reactor was in low power mode, just enough to keep some lights on. The food machines were locked and would not work without special codes. The communication system was broken, damaged by people, so Daniel could not call for help. The water recycling still worked at least. 6 days to live, alone on a station far from any help. The nearest friendly port was 3 weeks away and no ships were coming this direction. Nobody knew he was still here. Nobody cared. Daniel felt the weight of it all pressing down on him. He wanted to give up, to just sit down and wait for the end, but something in him refused. His grandfather had been a Navy engineer who taught him that every problem had a solution if you worked hard enough. His mother had raised 3 kids alone after his father died, showing him what real strength meant. He pulled up the station's technical files on the computer. The company never shared complete information with human workers. They treated humans like simple tools who only needed to know their basic jobs. But Daniel had been collecting data for the past year, copying files, learning how the station really worked. He had built his own database of information. Station was not just a mining station. It was a strategic control point for the whole sector. Whoever controlled this station could monitor every ship, every communication, every transaction in dozens of star systems. They had used it to control trade and mining rights across the region. Now the station was abandoned, floating in space like a ghost. The company was bankrupt and had run away before their creditors could seize everything. The station would be claimed by whoever got here first. Daniel looked at the technical files again. The station's main computer was intact. The reactor could run at full power if he activated it. The defensive weapons had been removed years ago, but the files said they were stored somewhere on the lower decks. The sensor arrays were military grade, much better than a commercial station needed. An idea started forming in his mind. It was crazy, probably impossible, but it was better than waiting to die. If he could take control of the station's main computer, really take control with full access to everything, he could change his situation. He could call for help, defend himself if pirates came, maybe even trade his way to safety. It would mean breaking into systems that were supposed to be unbreakable. It would mean working without sleep, without proper tools, with only his knowledge and stubbornness to guide him. The security was supposed to be perfect. But Daniel had learned something important. The other aliens all made the same mistake. They built their security to stop attacks from outside, but they never thought about threats from inside. They never considered that the low-level maintenance workers might be smart enough and angry enough to use what they knew. Daniel had spent a year studying the station's computer systems. He had found the maintenance, the emergency overrides, the diagnostic tools that could bypass normal security. He had built his own hacking device from spare parts, disguised as a simple repair tool so they would not notice. He pulled out his toolkit and found the device. It looked like a normal data reader, but it was actually designed to exploit the security weaknesses he had discovered. Time to see if it worked. Daniel connected the device to the engineering console and started typing commands. The station's computer used quantum encryption that was supposed to be impossible to break, but Daniel was not trying to break it from outside. He was already inside the system with his maintenance access. He just needed to go deeper. The first security layer fell after 2 hours of work. The second layer took 4 hours and required him to physically rewire 3 different access points while running special code through his device. By the time he broke through the third layer, 12 hours had passed and he had eaten the last of his emergency food. But he had complete access to station's computer core. Daniel sat back in his chair, exhausted but excited. This was just the beginning. Having access was one thing, but using it was another challenge entirely. The station was designed to be run by a full crew of trained people. He was one human with limited supplies and limited time. He started giving commands to the computer. First priority was life support. He brought the reactor up to 20% power and made sure the air and heat would keep working. That gave him months instead of days. He unlocked the food machines. He turned on the communication systems but kept them on receive-only mode, listening to what was happening in the sector without letting anyone know he was here. What he heard made him stop and think hard. Station was not just abandoned, it was the center of a three-way fight. The company owed huge debts to the consortium, a powerful alien corporation, that had won the legal right to seize the station. But a local warlord claimed the station was in his territory and his ships were coming to take it by force. Meanwhile, they were desperately trying to make deals with anyone who would pay their debts. None of them knew that the station now had a new operator. Daniel pulled up the files on the station's defensive weapons. They had removed them years ago to save money, but they had stored everything in the lower cargo decks instead of selling it. There were plasma cannons designed to cut through asteroid rock or enemy ships. There were point defense systems to shoot down missiles. There were shield generators rated for military use. It was a fortune in weapons, forgotten in gathering dust because they only cared about immediate profits. Daniel made a decision. He had time now and he had access to the station systems. If he could install those weapons, really install them properly, the station could defend itself. He could defend himself. They had made a huge mistake when they left him here. They thought humans were primitive and stupid. They thought 3 years of watching him fix their equipment meant they knew everything he could do. They were wrong. Daniel opened his technical files and started planning. He would need to move the weapons from storage to their proper positions. He would need to connect power lines, cooling systems, and targeting computers. It would take days of brutal physical work in spaces not designed for humans. But he had been left here to die, and he refused to accept that fate. If they wanted him dead, if the galaxy thought humans were worthless, he would prove them all wrong. Station had teeth now, even if nobody knew it yet. And Daniel Pierce was going to make sure everyone learned to respect what a human could do when pushed too far. Daniel spent 3 days learning how to run the station by himself. It was harder than he expected. The food machines kept trying to make meals for biology instead of human biology, and he had to reprogram them constantly. The temperature controls wanted to make everything too hot for human comfort. The lights used colors that humans could not see properly, giving him headaches until he changed them. But he was alive, and that mattered most. He listened to the communication channels and learned what was happening around him. The consortium had sent 3 warships to take the station. They would arrive in 4 days. The warlord had a fleet of 14 ships coming in 6 days. The company was trying to make deals with both groups, offering to sell information from the station's sensors in exchange for debt forgiveness. None of them had checked if anyone was still on the station. Daniel stood in the main control room, a huge circular space built for 30 operators. Most of the screens were dark now, showing only the information he needed. The station's sensors could detect ships across dozens of star systems. He could see energy signatures, track movements, even intercept and decode communications. It was amazing to have this much information after years of being kept in the dark. But information alone would not save him. He needed real power. He went down to the lower storage decks to see what weapons were available. The area was cold and dark, filled with sealed containers that nobody had opened in years. Daniel found the weapons cache and started reading the labels. 8 plasma cannons designed to destroy asteroids or enemy ships, 16-point defense guns for shooting down missiles, shield generators strong enough for military battles. They had left all of this here because selling it as scrap cost less than reinstalling it. They thought like accountants, only caring about immediate profit. They never considered that someone might value these weapons for what they could do. Daniel smiled. He was going to put these weapons back where they belonged. For 2 days he worked almost without sleeping. The station's automated cargo systems helped him move the heavy weapons, but he had to do the installation himself. Each weapon needed power cables, cooling pipes, and targeting computers connected. The work was brutal. His hands got cut and burned. His back hurt from crawling through access tubes built for aliens with different body shapes. He kept going on stimulant drugs from the medical bay in pure determination. On the 5th day, he activated the first plasma cannon. The targeting system turned on smoothly, tracking a piece of floating debris. The weapon charged with a deep humming sound he could feel through the floor. Daniel selected a target, an old fuel container tumbling through space, and fired. The plasma bolt erased the container instantly, turning it to vapor. The targeting computer reported perfect accuracy. Daniel felt a surge of satisfaction. Station could fight back now. By the time the ships arrived, he had 6 plasma cannons working and half of the point defense guns operational. The shield generators were still broken, needing special parts he did not have, but the weapons alone changed everything. The ships appeared at the edge of sensor range, right where commercial vessels were supposed to arrive. 3 ships came just as expected, a heavy cruiser as the main ship with 2 smaller escort frigates on either side. They broadcast on standard channels, announcing their intention to take station under official orders from the Commerce Assembly. Daniel watched them approach on his screens, feeling his heart pound. This was the moment. He could hide and hope they did not find him. He could surrender and beg for mercy, or he could do what his 3 years of abuse had prepared him for. He opened a communication channel to the flagship. A face appeared on the screen, flat and angular with metallic-looking skin and no hair. This was an officer. "This is Commander of the Consortium Enforcement Division," the officer said through his translator. The voice sounded formal and cold. "You are in a station that has been legally seized to satisfy debts. Identify yourself." Daniel took a breath. "This is Daniel Pierce, Station Commander of Station. Your claim is not recognized. You must stay at least 50 kilometers away." There was a pause, leaned forward slightly, clearly surprised. "Station Commander, records show this facility was abandoned. All personnel were evacuated." "The records are wrong. I am claiming this station under the Salvage and Recovery Act, Section 23. That law grants ownership to anyone who maintains an abandoned facility and makes it operational again. I have been here for 5 days. The station is fully operational under my control." It was a legal trick, one Daniel had found while reading through the complex laws of galactic commerce. The Salvage and Recovery Act was meant for finding abandoned ships or stations and claiming them. It was a long shot, but Daniel was betting they would not want a long legal fight. He was wrong about that. His expression hardened. "The Salvage Act does not apply to property under legal seizure. We are proceeding with our boarding operation. Surrender control immediately." "I refuse," Daniel said. "This station is defended. Any attempt to board will be met with force." Actually laughed, a harsh sound the translator barely captured. "Defended. This is a decommissioned commercial station. We are a military vessel. Stand down before you get killed, human." Daniel had expected this response. Aliens had been calling him weak and primitive for 3 years. One more did not matter. What mattered was what he did next. He targeted the flagship with 2 plasma cannons and fired a warning shot, deliberately missing by 100 meters but close enough to make his point. The energy discharge lit up the space between them, and he saw his face go rigid with shock. "Those are military-grade plasma cannons," Daniel said calmly. "I have 6 operational, with more coming online. I also have point defense systems. This station was built as a military installation 40 years ago. The weapons were stored, not removed. You are not facing a commercial facility. You are facing an armed fortress operated by someone with nothing to lose." The 3 ships stopped moving, their engines flaring as they held position. Daniel could imagine the frantic conversations happening on their bridge, the sudden recalculation of risk and reward. A commercial station was easy prey. A fortified military base was something else entirely. "You are bluffing," said, but the voice lacked conviction. "One human cannot operate this station effectively." "I am operating it well enough to destroy your ship if you come closer," Daniel replied. "Want to test me?" The standoff lasted 3 hours. The ships maneuvered carefully, running scans, clearly trying to assess his defenses. Daniel kept his weapons locked on them, tracking their every move. His hands shook from exhaustion and adrenaline, but he kept his voice steady each time they contacted him. Finally called again. "We are consulting with our command authority. We will maintain current position while negotiations proceed." Daniel nodded. "That is acceptable. Just remember that I am watching you, Commander. Do not make me nervous." The channel closed. Daniel collapsed in his command chair, feeling the weight of what he had just done. He had threatened military warships, claimed legal ownership of a station that was not his, and bluffed his way through a confrontation that could have killed him instantly. He was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Time would tell which one. But for now, he was still alive. They were keeping their distance, uncertain how to handle a situation that fell outside their normal procedures. Daniel had bought himself time, and time was what he needed most. He pulled up the sensor data and saw something that made his blood run cold. His pirate fleet had detected the standoff and changed course. 14 ships were now burning hard toward the station, clearly intent on claiming it before anyone else could. The pirates would not be as cautious as they would attack without hesitation, trying to overwhelm his defenses through sheer numbers. Daniel looked at his 6 plasma cannons and half-operational point defense grid. It might be enough, it might not be. Either way, he was about to find out if a human engineer could really hold a station against a pirate fleet. He checked his weapon's status, ran diagnostics on all systems, and prepared for the fight of his life. They had left him here to die. Instead, he had turned their abandoned station into a fortress. Now he would see if that fortress could survive a real battle. Daniel allowed himself a grim smile. Whatever happened next, at least he was going down fighting. That was more than they had given him the chance to do. Station's weapons hummed with power, ready and waiting. The pirates were coming, and Daniel Pierce was ready for them. The news spread faster than light speed. Station was occupied and armed, and everyone in the sector wanted to know what was happening. Daniel listened to the communication channels and heard the story change with each telling. Merchant ships gossiped about a human engineer who had been abandoned, but somehow seized control of an entire station. Corporate networks buzzed with speculation. Some versions claimed he had destroyed ships, which was not true. Others said he commanded an army of robots, also not true. A few suggested he was secretly working for Earth's government, establishing human control in the sector. That last one made Daniel laugh out loud in his empty control room. The truth was simpler. He had survived through skill and luck, taken control of systems they thought were secure, and installed weapons they thought were worthless. Now he had the ship sitting at a cautious distance whilst pirate fleet burned toward him at maximum speed. Daniel spent his time improving defenses. The last 2 plasma cannons came online. The point defense grid reached full power. He managed to get 2 shield generators partially working using parts he fabricated in the station's manufacturing bay. The shields would not stop a sustained attack, but they would give him a few precious seconds to respond. More importantly, he started restoring other station systems. The hydroponics bays on Deck 7 began producing fresh vegetables for the first time in months. The manufacturing facilities could make spare parts, tools, even simple weapons. The communication array let him intercept and decode most traffic in the sector, giving him intelligence that was incredibly valuable. Station was becoming more than just a defensive position. It was becoming a place he could actually live and work. On the 8th day of his occupation, he received an unexpected message. A small merchant ship had been watching from the edge of sensor range. The captain contacted him directly. Her name was Lisa Park, an independent trader who carried cargo between outer colonies. "I heard what you did," she said when her face appeared on his screen. She looked middle-aged with short hair and the tough appearance of someone who had spent years in space. One human against the consortium. That takes real courage or real stupidity, maybe both. "Probably both," Daniel admitted. "What can I do for you, Captain Park?" "I have a business proposal. There are many independent traders in this sector who are tired of paying this high docking fees and this protection money. If you are serious about holding this station, we could use a neutral port, somewhere not controlled by corporations or pirates." Daniel leaned forward, interested. "What are you suggesting?" "Set up fair docking fees, provide fuel, supplies, basic repairs. Do not ask too many questions about what we carry. In exchange, we will spread the word that station is open for business and protected. You will get customers, and we will get a place to operate without being squeezed by the big players." It was an opportunity Daniel had not considered. The station could handle commercial traffic easily. The docking bays were huge, designed for dozens of ships. The fuel systems could produce different types of propellant. He had everything needed to run a trading post except customers and reputation. "I need supplies," Daniel said. "Parts, raw materials, food, medical equipment. I am running on salvage and whatever was left behind." Lisa smiled. "I can arrange that. There are always people willing to sell to someone who pays fair prices. Give me a list and I will spread the word through my network." They talked for an hour, working out details. Lisa would be his first customer, a test to see if this idea could work. She would pay modest docking fees, buy fuel at reasonable rates, and tell other independents that station was back in business under new management. After she left, Daniel thought about what he had agreed to. He had gone from trying to survive to trying to run a commercial station. all while facing potential military action from multiple groups. It was crazy and ambitious, but it made him feel truly alive for the first time in 3 years. They had not gone away. Commander contacted him regularly, switching between threats and negotiation attempts. They offered to let him leave peacefully if he surrendered the station. They offered to hire him as a consultant if he cooperated. They even offered money for his trouble. Daniel refused everything, not because of greed, but because of principle. He had been abandoned and written off as worthless. Now he had power, and he was not giving it up without getting something real in return. His pirate fleet arrived on the 10th day, dropping out of faster-than-light travel in an aggressive formation designed to intimidate. The warlord himself appeared on Daniel's screen. Was it with scaled features and multiple rows of sharp teeth visible when he spoke? "You are the human who thinks he can hold my station," said in a deep growl that the translator struggled with. "I respect boldness, but this sector belongs to me. Surrender now and I will let you live. Resist and I will blow you to atoms." Daniel had prepared for this. He had studied its operation through intercepted communications. The warlord's power depended entirely on his reputation for ruthlessness. Controlled the sector through fear, not legitimate authority. Any sign of weakness would damage that reputation badly. Which meant would have to attack if Daniel him. There was no middle ground. "This station is mine," Daniel said calmly. "I claimed it legally under galactic salvage law. I defended it against I will defend it against you. Come closer and find out what happens." His expression twisted into something between a smile and a snarl. "You are either brave or suicidal. Let me show you the difference." The pirate fleet advanced, 14 ships moving together. Daniel watched them come, his hand steady on the weapons controls despite the fear in his gut. This was different from facing those had been professionals who followed rules and calculated losses. Pirates had no such limits. They would take the station or destroy it, and killing him meant nothing to them. At 20 kilometers, Daniel opened fire. The plasma cannons discharged in sequence, targeting the 2 corvettes that led his fleet. The first shot hit one corvette in the middle, overwhelming its shields and melting through armor. The ship tumbled out of formation, clearly crippled. The second shot missed as its target dodged with surprising speed, but the point defense grid caught an armed freighter trying to flank, tearing it apart with cannon fire. The pirate fleet scattered, abandoning their formation as individual captains decided survival was more important than orders. His voice roared over the communication channels, demanding they hold position, but discipline had broken. 3 ships activated their faster-than-light drives and ran away. The rest fell back to 30 kilometers, regrouping around the warlord's flagship. Daniel felt fierce satisfaction. He had hurt them badly. 1 corvette crippled, 1 freighter destroyed, 3 ships fled. That was a real victory. But it was not over. Its remaining ships began long-range bombardment, firing missiles and energy weapons. Daniel's shields absorbed the first barrage, though he could see the generators straining under the load. He returned fire when targets presented themselves, forcing the pirates to constantly maneuver and disrupting their aim. The battle settled into a pattern neither side could break. It might have continued until someone ran out of ammunition or power, except something unexpected happened. The ships moved forward, positioning themselves between the pirates and the station. Commander broadcast on an open channel. "This station is subject to legal seizure under Commerce Assembly authority. You are interfering with official consortium business. Stand down immediately." Daniel stared at his displays, shocked. They were defending him, not because they liked him, but because they wanted the station intact and under their control, not destroyed by pirates. The enemy of my enemy, Daniel thought. Sometimes the universe offered strange partnerships. His response was predictable. "The consortium has no authority here. Leave or be destroyed with the human." Now it was a 3-way standoff. The pirates wanted to take the station by force. They wanted to claim it legally. Daniel wanted to survive and keep his independence. None of these goals were compatible. Daniel made a quick decision that would change everything. He opened a private communication channel to Commander, bypassing the pirates. "I have a proposal. Help me defeat, and I will negotiate with you in good faith about the station's status. I am not promising to surrender, but I will talk seriously. That is more than you will get if the pirates destroy this place." Long pause, then replied, "Terms accepted. Target their flagship. We will handle the rest." The battle that followed was brief and brutal. Daniel focused his plasma cannons on his flagship while the cruiser and escorts engaged the remaining pirate vessels. Outnumbered and facing both military ships and a fortified station, the pirates broke. His flagship took a direct hit that breached its reactor, forcing emergency evacuation. The other ships scattered, some fleeing to faster-than-light speed, others surrendering. In 15 minutes, it was over. Daniel sat in his command chair, breathing hard, barely able to believe he had survived. He had just fought and won a battle against a pirate fleet with help from the same military force that wanted to seize his station. The situation was almost funny. Commander called again. "Well fought, Station Commander. Now shall we discuss terms?" "Yes," Daniel said, feeling exhaustion crash over him. "Let us talk." He had survived another impossible situation. The pirates were defeated. They were willing to negotiate instead of attack. Station was still his, at least for now. But Daniel knew this was just the beginning. Real challenges were still ahead, and he would need every bit of skill and determination to face them. The negotiations with Commander lasted 3 days and produced an agreement that surprised both sides. The consortium kept its legal claim to Station as payment for the company's debts. However, they agreed to lease operational control to Daniel for 5 years. He could extend that lease or buy the station outright if he generated enough revenue to pay off the remaining debt. In exchange, Daniel would operate the station as a neutral trading post, providing services to any ships willing to pay fair rates and sharing a percentage of profits with the consortium. It was the best outcome Daniel could have hoped for. He had legitimacy now, backed by one of the sector's major powers. Pirates would not dare attack a consortium-affiliated station without risking open war. Other corporations would have to recognize his authority. Most importantly, he had time to prove this venture could succeed. They also provided unexpected support. 2 of their engineers arrived to help him complete repairs and system upgrades. These professionals treated him with cautious respect rather than the contempt he had experienced with the. They were surprised by how much he had accomplished alone, especially getting the weapon systems operational without proper documentation or specialized tools. Most species could not have done this, one engineer admitted. Her name was a female who specialized in weapon systems. The targeting computer alone requires 3 separate calibration procedures. How did you manage it? Trial and error, Daniel replied honestly. Also, I pulled the maintenance logs from when this place was a military station. The original procedures were still in the computer archives. Studied him with an expression he could not quite read. Your species has a reputation for being primitive. Clearly that reputation is inaccurate, or at least incomplete. It was the first time an alien had suggested humans might be more capable than their reputation indicated. Daniel noted that carefully, sensing an opportunity to change perceptions beyond just his own situation. Word of the settlement spread quickly through the sector. Lisa Park returned with a cargo hold full of supplies and 3 other independent traders following her. They were cautious at first, testing whether the station would actually provide fair treatment. Daniel made sure to deliver on every promise. Fair prices, no unreasonable questions, fast service. Within a week, traffic began increasing as word spread through the independent trading network. Daniel worked hard to make the station functional as a commercial operation. The docking bays were cleaned and repaired, with automated systems restored to handle multiple ships. The fuel processing systems were brought to full capacity, able to produce 5 different propellant types. The food machines were to accommodate different species' dietary needs. The manufacturing facilities started producing repair parts and simple goods that traders could purchase. He even reopened the station's small commercial district, activating shops and services that had been closed when they abandoned the facility. Most were automated, needing only basic oversight, but they provided amenities that traveling crews appreciated. A place to relax, eat, and socialize during long voyages. The station began to feel alive again. On the 20th day of his occupation, a ship arrived that changed everything. It was a small diplomatic vessel from the Galactic Commerce Assembly, carrying an inspector named Christopher who was human like Daniel. It was the first human Daniel had seen in person since being abandoned. Christopher was older, maybe 50, with gray hair and tired eyes that suggested years of navigating complex systems. He introduced himself formally, inspecting Daniel's documentation with professional care. But when they were alone in the control room, his manner changed completely. "Do you have any idea what you have done?" Christopher asked, sitting heavily in one of the command chairs. One human taking control of an entire station, fighting off pirates and corporations, negotiating with the consortium. The story has reached Earth. You are headline news back home. Daniel blinked, startled. He had been so focused on survival and operations that he had not considered broader implications. "I was just trying not to die." "Well, you have done much more than that. You have proven something important." Christopher leaned forward, his expression intense. Humans have been second-class citizens in galactic commerce for decades. We are seen as cheap labor, good for dangerous work but not fit for leadership or skilled positions. Every human trying to build a business or career out here faces that prejudice, and then you come along and do the impossible. I got lucky, Daniel protested, if they had not intervened against. Luck is part of it, sure, but you created your own luck by being competent, resourceful, and brave enough to take risks. You showed that a human can operate at the same level as any other species, maybe better. Christopher smiled. Earth's government wants to offer you formal support. We have funds available for human commercial ventures in frontier sectors. We can provide additional personnel, equipment, whatever you need to expand operations. Daniel felt overwhelmed. I did not do this to make a political statement. I was just trying to survive. The best statements are the ones we make through our actions, not our words, Christopher replied. You have given hope to thousands of humans working in bad conditions throughout the galaxy. You have shown there is an alternative to accepting whatever the major species throw at us. That matters, Daniel. It matters a lot. They talked for hours, working through details. Earth's government would provide financial backing and diplomatic support in exchange for Station becoming an official human trade outpost, a foothold for Earth's expanding commercial interests. Daniel would maintain operational control, but he would have resources and backing that would let him grow far beyond what he could do alone. It was an opportunity he could not refuse. Over the following weeks, more humans arrived. Engineers, administrators, security personnel, traders, all eager to be part of something historic. The station's human population grew from 1 to 30, then to 50. Private quarters were opened and furnished. The commercial district expanded with human-owned businesses. A small community began forming. People who had come to the frontier seeking opportunity and found it here, in a station that had been left to die but instead became something new. Not everyone was happy about these developments. The company filed legal challenges, claiming Daniel had stolen their property. His remaining forces made threats and occasionally harassed ships heading to the station. Several major corporations complained to the Commerce Assembly that an independent human operation was disrupting their established trade networks. Daniel dealt with each problem as it arose, learning to navigate the complex web of galactic politics and commerce. He hired a lawyer who specialized in salvage law, someone who understood the systems well enough to defend against his former employers. He arranged for regular patrols around the station, making clear that attacking meant fighting the consortium. He negotiated trade agreements with smaller corporations willing to work with an independent operator. The station became more than just a refueling point. It became a center of information, with Daniel's intelligence network providing valuable data on market conditions, ship movements, and sector politics. Traders began relying on his updates, knowing that Station's information was accurate and unbiased by corporate interests. He sold this intelligence carefully, building relationships while maintaining neutrality. 4 months after being abandoned, Daniel stood in the observation deck, watching ships come and go from the docking bays below. 24 vessels were currently in port, everything from small independent traders to larger corporate freighters. The station that had been silent and dying when he arrived now hummed with activity, alive with commerce and purpose. Lisa Park joined him, carrying 2 containers of coffee from the station's newly opened human. She had become a regular visitor and unofficial advisor, someone who understood the independent trading community better than anyone. "Congratulations," she said, handing him a coffee. "You have built something remarkable here." "We have built it," Daniel corrected. "I could not have done this without people like you spreading the word, bringing in business." Lisa smiled. "True, but you are the one who had the courage to claim this place when anyone else would have just waited to die or tried to escape. That matters. You set the example." They stood quietly, drinking coffee and watching the ships. Daniel felt accomplishment mixed with awareness of how much work remained. The station was operational but not secure. The lease with the required him to generate significant revenue, and while business was growing, he was not yet profitable enough to feel safe. The political situation remained unstable, with multiple parties still interested in controlling or destroying what he had built. But for the first time in 3 years, Daniel felt like he was building something meaningful, rather than just surviving day to day. He had gone from being disposable maintenance worker to station commander, from being abandoned to being the center of a growing commercial and political network. It was terrifying and exciting in equal measure. "What is next?" Lisa asked. "You have proven you can hold and operate this place. What is the long-term plan?" Daniel considered the question. He had been so focused on immediate problems that he had not thought much about the future beyond survival. But now, with resources and support, he could think bigger. I want to expand, he said slowly, the idea forming as he spoke. There are other abandoned stations in this sector, facilities that corporations have written off. If we could claim and reactivate even a few of them, we would have a network, independent stations under human management, providing alternatives to corporate-controlled ports. That is ambitious, Lisa said, but she was smiling. Also potentially very profitable if you can pull it off, and it would seriously annoy the major corporations. More importantly, it would provide opportunities for other humans, Daniel replied. People stuck in bad situations like I was. If we can show there is an alternative, that humans can operate independently and successfully out here, it changes everything. Lisa raised her coffee container. To changing everything then, and to the stubborn engineer who started it all by refusing to die quietly. Daniel touched his container to hers, feeling both responsibility and possibility. He had been left to die on an alien station, and instead he had taken control of opportunities across an entire sector. The story was not over. In many ways, it was just beginning. 6 months after being abandoned, Daniel Pierce stood before the Galactic Commerce Assembly's Regional Council, defending station's independence against corporate challenges that wanted to shut down his operation. The council chamber was designed to intimidate, a vast circular room with delegates from 30 species seated in rising tiers. At the center was a small platform where defendants stood, exposed to scrutiny from all sides. Daniel had prepared extensively for this moment, knowing his entire operation depended on winning the legal and political battle being fought here. The challenge had been brought by a group of corporations led by Solutions. They claimed Daniel's occupation of station violated multiple commerce regulations and that his continued operation damaged their legitimate business interests. They had assembled impressive legal arguments, backed by expensive lawyers and political influence. Daniel had Christopher and Earth's diplomatic corps supporting him, but he knew the outcome would ultimately depend on his own testimony and the strength of his position. The council's chairman, an elderly with multiple sensory stalks that swayed when he spoke, called the session to order. We are here to determine the legal status of station and whether the current operator has legitimate authority. Daniel Pierce, human, please present your case. Daniel stepped forward, feeling thousands of eyes on him, both in the chamber and watching via remote feed. He had dressed formally in a suit provided by Earth's diplomatic service, but he knew his appearance mattered less than his words. Honored counselors, he began, keeping his voice steady and clear. 6 months ago, I was an engineer employed by Solutions, working on station under a contract that promised fair wages and safe conditions. When the station was abandoned due to corporate bankruptcy, I was deliberately left behind by management who decided evacuating a human worker was not worth the cost. I was left to die. He paused, letting that fact register. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. Worker treatment was a sensitive topic in galactic politics, with strict laws often ignored in practice. I survived through my own skills and determination, Daniel continued. I claimed the station under the Salvage and Recovery Act, Section 23, which grants ownership rights to individuals who restore abandoned facilities. I defended that claim against military seizure and pirate attack. I have since operated the station as a commercial facility, providing services to hundreds of ships and generating economic activity throughout the sector. Everything I have done has been legal under existing Commerce Assembly regulations. The representative, a different individual than but with the same dismissive manner, rose to respond. The human's claim is built on a misapplication of salvage law. Station was not truly abandoned. It was temporarily evacuated pending resolution of financial difficulties. Solutions always intended to return. That is a lie, Daniel said flatly, earning murmurs from the gallery. I have documented communications showing management deliberately left me behind, knowing I would die. I have recordings of Chief Operations Manager stating that human workers are expendable. Solutions wrote off the station as a total loss for tax purposes, publicly declaring it abandoned. They only became interested again when I made it valuable. He displayed the evidence on the chamber's main screen, letting the counselors see and hear words. The representative tried to object, but the chairman silenced them with a gesture. Furthermore, Daniel continued, the corporations challenging my operation are not concerned with legal principles. They are concerned with the precedent I have set. I have proven that independent operators can compete successfully with major corporations. I have shown that humans are capable of managing complex commercial operations. Most importantly, I have demonstrated that workers have alternatives to accepting exploitation. Now he had the council's full attention. This was the heart of the matter, the real reason corporations were fighting so hard to shut him down. Station was not just about one station or one human. It was about whether the established order of galactic commerce could be challenged by individuals and smaller players. The hearing lasted 6 hours, with multiple representatives speaking for and against Daniel's position. The consortium surprisingly supported him, arguing their lease arrangement was legal and mutually beneficial. Several independent trading organizations backed his operation, presenting evidence of how Station had improved commerce in the sector by providing fair, neutral services. Earth's government made a formal statement supporting human commercial ventures and arguing that discrimination against human operators violated assembly principles. But the corporate bloc was powerful, and they pushed back hard. They argued Daniel's weapon systems violated commercial operation licenses. They claimed his intelligence gathering activities constituted industrial espionage. They suggested his entire operation was a front for Earth's government to establish military presence in the sector. Daniel refuted each claim methodically, showing his weapons were purely defensive, that his intelligence operations only gathered public information, and that while Earth supported his work, he maintained operational independence. He was tired and hoarse by the time final arguments concluded, but he felt he had made his case as strongly as possible. The council retired to deliberate. Daniel waited in an antechamber with Christopher and the Earth diplomatic team, trying not to think about what would happen if he lost. They had made clear they would not continue their lease if the council ruled against him. The station would revert to or be seized by creditors. Everything he had built would disappear. 3 hours later, they were called back. The chairman spoke in formal, measured tones. The council has reached a decision. After reviewing all evidence and arguments, we find that Daniel Pierce's claim to Station is valid under the Salvage and Recovery Act. Furthermore, we find that Solutions' abandonment of the facility was complete and deliberate, negating any residual ownership claims. Daniel felt relief flood through him, but the chairman was not finished. However, we also recognize concerns raised about weapon systems and operational protocols. Therefore, Station will be granted a special commercial defensive operations license, allowing maintenance of defensive weapons but prohibiting offensive military actions. The station will be subject to regular inspections to ensure compliance. These terms are effective for 5 years, after which they may be renewed based on operational record. It was a compromise, but one Daniel could accept. He had won the core issue, legitimacy and the right to continue operating, while addressing the council's concerns about militarization. The inspection requirements would be annoying but manageable. As Daniel left the council chamber, he was surrounded by reporters and observers wanting statements. He kept his responses brief and professional, but inside he was celebrating. He had not only survived, he had won recognition from the sector's governing body. Station was officially legitimate. The following month saw explosive growth. With legal uncertainty resolved, more traders began using the station. Earth's government increased its support, sending additional personnel and resources. Daniel began negotiating to acquire 2 other abandoned facilities in the sector, planning to expand his network as he had discussed with Lisa. But the most significant development came from an unexpected source. Human workers throughout the sector, inspired by Daniel's success, began organizing. They formed associations demanding better treatment, fair wages, and protection under Commerce Assembly labor laws. They used Station as an example of what was possible when humans refused to accept exploitation, citing Daniel's transformation from abandoned worker to station commander as proof they deserved respect and opportunity. The movement grew rapidly, spreading beyond the sector to other frontier regions. Corporations pushed back, but the pressure was becoming impossible to ignore. The Commerce Assembly was forced to strengthen labor protections and increase enforcement. Several major corporations were fined for violations they had previously gotten away with. Change was happening, slowly but definitely. Daniel watched these developments with mixed feelings. He had never intended to start a labor movement or become a symbol of human resistance. He had just been trying to survive, but he could not deny the positive impact. Thousands of humans were benefiting from the changes his actions had catalyzed. A year after being abandoned, Station hosted a celebration marking its official recognition as an independent commercial facility. Ships from across the sector attended, filling the docking bays and surrounding space. The station's human population had grown to over 200, with plans to expand to 500 within the next year. The commercial district was thriving with businesses run by humans and aliens alike. The station's reputation for fair dealing and neutral services had made it a preferred port for independent traders and smaller corporations. Daniel stood in the observation deck where he had watched ships arrive during those first difficult months, now seeing a station transformed. Lisa Park stood beside him, along with Christopher, Commander, and several others who had become friends and allies during the tumultuous year. "You did it," Lisa said simply. "Everything you said you wanted to accomplish, you have done it." "We did it," Daniel corrected, the same response he had given before. "This was never just about me." "True," said the commander, having developed an almost friendly relationship with Daniel over months of cooperation. "But leadership matters. You provided direction when there was none. You took risks when others would have retreated. That is why this place exists." Christopher raised a glass. "To Daniel Pierce, the engineer who refused to die and instead built something that will outlast all of us. And to Station, proof that determination and skill matter more than size or power." They drank together, human and alien, celebrating an achievement that had seemed impossible a year earlier. Daniel felt responsibility along with satisfaction. The station was secure, growing, and making a real difference, but he knew the work was far from over. The sector was changing, becoming more competitive as independent operators and human ventures challenged corporate dominance. There would be more legal battles, more attempts to undermine what he had built, more challenges he could not yet predict, but he was ready for them. He had learned that survival was not enough. Building something meaningful, creating opportunities for others, standing up to systems that treated people as expendable, that was what mattered. 3 years ago, he had signed a contract with Solutions seeking adventure and opportunity. He had found both, but not in the way he expected. Instead of working for an alien corporation, he had become his own boss, responsible for hundreds of people and vital infrastructure. Instead of being treated as cheap labor, he had earned respect through competence and courage. Instead of accepting his assigned place, he had carved out a new one. As the celebration continued, Daniel looked out at the stars and the ships moving between them. Somewhere out there were other humans in situations like his had been, trapped in exploitative contracts, treated as less than they were worth. Station could not save all of them, but it could show them what was possible. It could demonstrate that humans belonged in the galactic community not as second-class citizens, but as equals. That was worth fighting for, that was worth building. Daniel Pierce had been abandoned to die on an alien station. Instead, he had taken control of an entire sector's worth of opportunity and used it to change the rules of galactic commerce. The and others like them had underestimated him, viewing humans as primitive and weak. They had learned better. As he looked at Station alive with activity and purpose, Daniel smiled. This was just the beginning. The sector was changing, and he was at the center of that change. Whatever challenges came next, he was ready for them. After all, he had already done the impossible once. Doing it again would just take determination, skill, and the stubborn refusal to accept what everyone else said was inevitable. That was something humans excelled at.